NFL Super Wild Card Weekend schedule has been announced. There are 3 days of football coming up this weekend. Saturday, January the 14th, we have Seattle at San Francisco, the number 7 seed Seattle in the NFC against the 2 seed San Francisco. Later on Saturday, 8:15 Eastern time, we head to the AFC. We've got the Chargers and the Jags. The Chargers are the 5 seed. The Jags are the 4 seed. On Sunday, we have a triple header starting at 1 o'clock p.m. Eastern time in the AFC. We've got the 7 seed Miami Dolphins against the number 2 seed Buffalo Bills. In the middle of the day on Sunday, 4:30 p.m. Eastern time, Giants and Vikings. Giants are the 6 seed. Vikings are the 3. Sunday night football game, AFC, Baltimore at Cincinnati. You've got the 6 seed and the 3 seed there in the AFC. We finish up with Monday Night Football. We have the Cowboys at the Bucks, number 5 Dallas at number 4 Tampa in the NFC. So that makes your number 1 seed in the AFC, the Kansas City Chiefs, the number 1 seed in the NFC, the Eagles. Remember, they both get byes. We will have 6 games coming up over the next 3 days of Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. Eric has been here with us to discuss every single game throughout the NFL season for the last 2 years at least. And a few years ago, he was with us most of the weeks of the NFL season. So, buddy, we've covered a lot of ground. It's playoff time. It's been a good year for guys like you and I because the Dogs have finished the regular season hitting at 56%. So if you're someone who likes to play a little contrarian, you've been doing well. The magic number to break even is what, around like 53% or so?
It's like 52 and change.
Yeah, 52-38, I think, if you're playing at like minus 110 standard juice. Now, we have all 6 of these games that are going to be rematches. So we were able to look back at games earlier in the year, maybe some games we could take a lot from, maybe some games that things are going to be completely different and maybe you can't really use them as a great gauge. Couple other small tidbits. The NFC East has now gone 18 straight years without a repeat champion. Kind of crazy. It's the longest streak for any division in NFL history, and it's the longest active streak for any division in NFL, NBA, MLB, or NHL. So we have a couple rookie quarterbacks. Rookie quarterbacks are 9 and 18 in the playoffs since 1983. A couple of them will be starting in the playoffs this year. In the last 4 playoffs, home teams have 24 wins. Road teams have 20 wins. So home field advantage over the last 4 years has not been that huge of a deal in the playoffs. Just keep in mind, we've had teams like Tampa go on the road and win 3 road games before winning a Super Bowl. Last year, you had the Bengals win a couple of road games themselves before making it to the Super Bowl. We've had the last 4 conference championship games, 4 road wins, 4 home wins. So, again, home field advantage, not quite as huge over the last 4 or 5 years. This is going to be the first time ever that 5 new head coaches reach the playoffs in the same year. Vikings, Jags, Giants, Dolphins, and Tampa, all with first-year head coaches that have made it. We start out on Saturday, and our first game is Seattle versus San Francisco. We have Seattle 9-8 straight up, 7-10 against the spread. San Francisco 13-4 straight up, 11-6 against the spread. So Eric, being in the division, these 2 teams have already played each other twice so far this year. San Francisco won both of those games. One of them was back in week 2. The other was in week 15. San Francisco won 21-13 in a game that was at Seattle. They were favored by like 3.5 in that game. So San Francisco is favored by almost 10 in this game now, being at home. Over-under in this game is only 42 because there could be some rain and some wet weather. So that's a pretty big number for a low total where there could be some wet weather here. Looking at Seattle, their best wins this year against the Chargers and against the Giants would probably be considered their best wins. Worst losses, both of the losses to San Fran. They actually lost to the Falcons. Carolina, they got beat up by Kansas City on the San Fran side. You know, they're a team when you dive into their schedule, they beat up on some pretty bad teams too. They beat a banged up Chargers team. They beat Seattle twice. They beat the Dolphins and Tampa on a short week. They have some pretty bad losses, though, too, to the Bears, the Broncos, the Falcons. They were all on the road. They got beat up by Kansas City Let's talk this one out, Eric. Seattle and San Fran in our first playoff game.
I mean, I think the the main thing is I'm looking at the Santa Clara forecast: rain, potentially heavy rainfall, chance of rain 100%. But the two things that stick out to me is winds 20 miles an hour, rainfall possibly over an inch. That's a little worrisome to me. We kind of saw what happened at Soldier Field with the San Francisco team when they played the first game of the season. But in fairness, that's a lot newer stadium. Soldier Field's kind of a piece of crap, in all honesty.
That was Trey Lance.
Yeah, that was Trey
right?
Lance.
Lots of different stuff there. No McCaffrey. Like, there's a lot of different things from that game.
So there's a lot of things you can take away. McCaffrey's a little bit banged up. Mitchell came back, maybe an Elon Mitchell game. I'll be honest, interesting movement. One sports book hung a 6.5. And I'm pissed off I missed it. Hung a 6.5 late Sunday night. When I woke up the next day, the thing has already ballooned up to 10. So that's, I don't know. I can't possibly lay 10 with the 49ers when you have Brock Purdy starting.
No.
But on the flip side, teams have kind of figured out how to play Geno Smith. And it's really hard to trust him. So I really don't know what I want to do. Right off of openers, I did bet George Kittle anytime touchdown at plus 150. Since Purdy has taken over the 49ers, Kittle is averaging 6.4 targets, 4.4 receptions, 53 yards, 1.4 touchdowns a game. The last time the 49ers played the Seahawks with Purdy starting, 5 targets, 4 receptions, 93 yards, 2 touchdowns. Seahawks have struggled covering the tight end all season long. And you got to keep this in mind. Kittle missed 2 games, and he was still second on the team in red zone targets. He plays a full season. He's going to lead the team in red zone targets. And since Purdy has taken over, he leads the team in red zone targets. So I took that off of openers, but obviously with the weather forecast, I'm a little bit hesitant about that bet. It's dipped down to 140 now in most books. So I did get the better number. But in terms of...
See, because what's hard is that the number is big.
What's hard here is the weather.
Yeah, and because the way to beat San Francisco is through the air. Like, you can attack them through the air, you can attack their secondary. Unfortunately, if it's raining bad like that, and Seattle can't throw, that might make the template of the game better for San Francisco to just run the ball, because Seattle's not quite as good stopping the run. And if San Fran just wants to run the ball over and over, it'll make it a little bit easier, a little less pressure on Purdy. Keep in mind, this is also Geno Smith's first ever playoff game. He is a veteran, though. Some stuff on the Seattle side. They're at plus 6,500 to win the Super Bowl. That is the co-longest shot with the Dolphins. So the co-longest odds to win it. They're number 13 in EPA per play on offense, number 26 in EPA per play on defense. Ranked number 24 in the Pro Football Focus Power Rankings. They had the number 26 strength of schedule on the year. Actually, number 10 in DVOA, 14 offense DVOA, 21 defense DVOA, number 4 special teams. They got off to a 6-3 start this year. They have some nice wins. They beat the Lions. They beat the Giants by 14, Chargers by 14. Then they lost 5 of their next 6 before winning the final 2 games of the year. Keep in mind, they were projected to win 5.5 games this year. They had the 4th longest odds to make the playoffs before the season started. So they've done a great job just to get here. They struggled in November and early December. They just couldn't run the ball well during that stretch. But Walker's healthy again. He went for over 100 yards for the 3rd straight game to end the year with over 1,000 yards rushing. Had a season-high 29 carries last week, 114 yards. 7 runs for a first down, including a 20-yard run in overtime to put them at the 27-yard line to set them up for a field goal. They do have some defensive injuries, though. Their linebacker, Brooks, and their nose tackle out or banged up. That's going to make things more difficult for them. One of the reasons why they're here, Eric, is because their rookies were very, very good this year. They got lots of production. Rookies started 70 games this year for them. That's tied for the most for any team since 1970. And that's sort of why, on a lot of projections, teams didn't think they were going to be closer to a 9-win team, because it's hard to project these rookies coming in and producing right away, but they did. They've gotten a lot of production out of them, and a win total that was 5.5, they got all the way up to 9. And shout out to Geno, who had a really nice year, but he has struggled a little bit down the stretch. Like you said, the film's out on him. We know now kind of what to do, make things difficult for him. He did set franchise records in completion percentage, pass attempts, passing yards, became the first Seattle quarterback to lead the NFL in completion percentage since 1991, but 10 turnovers in the last 8 games. And, with the rainy forecast we saw last week, they were just 1 of 11 on third down when it was rainy for them in a wet weather situation. They've done well creating turnovers. Maybe that's a way they can stay in this game. They've created 24 turnovers this year. They're just not good at stopping the run. They've allowed 8 different opponents to run for at least 160 yards this year. Both games against San Fran, the Niners ran for 170 and then 180 plus. They got to be sharper on offense too. 3 different times last week they had to settle for field goals in the red zone. The one thing I'm looking at for them, both games against the Niners, they tried to run the ball on early downs, and they were just not successful. So they end up putting themselves in 3rd and long situations, which are obvious passing situations. So they were pressured on 50% of their third down dropbacks in the 2 regular season matchups, and they had to an average go 3rd and 10.7 yards. That's a really tough spot to be in. You're an underdog. You're coming in here playing a team that's like a 10-point favorite, basically. You've got nothing to lose. You weren't supposed to be here. They got to get creative at least here, Eric, right? They got to come out and try to throw the ball on first down a little bit, like not be so predictable, change things that didn't work for them the first couple times they played.
And I mean, the 49ers, they run this funnel type defense, which kind of forces everything in the middle because of the injuries, like you mentioned. Jimmy Ward is playing the slot position, which creates up for a very favorable matchup for Tyler Lockett, who's coming back. He did play last week after coming back from injury. But again, if it's 20-mile-per-hour winds and it's a wet ball and a wet field,
yeah,
that, you know what I mean? Like,
it takes out Lockett. You know what I mean? It hurts Lockett too, who, like, he kind of bounced back. He was a little bit healthier last week. He's, 12th in Pro Football Focus receiving grade. But does that matter? Their offensive line is really struggling.
It's windy and rainy, like that's a prime matchup you can take advantage of. But if the elements don't allow you to, you really can't, which is kind of hard.
Right. They got to blitz more too, I think, on defense. Because there are
2 rookie tackles too. 2 rookie tackles. You have to remember that.
They're 30th in adjusted line yards created, 24th in run block win rate this year. The offensive line is really struggling. I mean, this Niners team is a good football team, right? They're 5 in offensive EPA. They're number 1 in defensive EPA. They're tied for 3rd in the Pro Football Focus power rankings. Number 2 DVOA, number 1 defensive DVOA, number 6 on offense. But they had the easiest strength of schedule in the league. They won 10 in a row after starting 3 and 4. They're plus 550 to win the Super Bowl, which has them as the co-third choice right there with the Eagles. Can Purdy sustain this play? He's made 5 starts, and no rookie quarterback has ever made the Super Bowl, let alone win it. No third-string quarterback has ever led a team to the Super Bowl. Teams have made the Super Bowl in years when they've started backups and third stringers, but by the time they got to the Super Bowl, the initial starter was back. Since week 8, here are their opponents. Chargers without Allen and Williams. The Rams, who were bad. Arizona with Colt McCoy. The Saints in a 13-0 game where the Saints got stopped twice at the goal line and could have won that game. Miami without their linemen when all the linemen got hurt. Seattle, who has lost 5 of 6 during that stretch. Washington, who made a quarterback change to Wentz. The Raiders with Stidham, they went to overtime, and they played Arizona with David Blau and McSorley. They played 3 teams this year with a winning record. Seattle, Kansas City, and the Chargers. They got crushed by Kansas City. The Chargers were really banged up when they played them, and they beat Seattle twice. And the one game against Seattle, it was 7-3, and Seattle was driving, and Seattle fumbled the ball. 49ers got it, went down and scored. It was 14-3, and the game was over. It just completely flipped the game. I don't think Seattle was going to win the game or anything, but it definitely flipped the script of that game. And again, we got this rookie quarterback, Purdy, here, who, if they're in a position where he has to throw and it's not great, and now he has to go out there and there's a little bit of pressure on him, that's just a big number for me. I'm definitely not laying this. And after it hits 7.5, that was my buy-in point, I think, on Seattle.
Yeah, I think I'm just going to sit with my Kittle touchdown bet in this game, to be utterly honest with you, just because the weather is a really big concern with me. And, when we look at this 49ers team, if you just look at the offensive line, you got Williams, you do have some concerns, but you have a solid bookend tackle who can compete and lock pretty much any pass rusher on that side up. You have a great defensive line that's good against the run. You have a solid linebacker core. You have holes in the secondary. But those holes in the secondary can be band-aided. If Bosa, Armstead, and company can't get home, they can kind of band-aid those holes.
Yep.
We kind of have to start thinking like this team could just kind of be like that Dilford-led Ravens team back in the day. Well, you know what I mean? The team that won it on defense.
And it's key. Like if you have to have a team that can beat them throwing the ball. And unfortunately, this team isn't like your Lions. I thought would have matched up really well with San Francisco, because the Lions have a good offensive line, so they can at least give Goff a little bit of time to try to move the ball, and then they could throw the ball down the field a little bit too.
Yeah.
Now,
but that's
still
what you
think
need.
You
need an offensive line. They need a team that can beat them two ways, like a team that can throw and a team that can pass. Unfortunately, I don't think the 49ers can. Geno's been trending in a downward trajectory. The Seahawks defense, Seahawks have been playing poorly the last month.
Really poorly. And you wonder.
Really hard. I know it's the third game. I do kind of lead like the first half under, because this is the third time they met. They're familiar with their system. Carroll's probably going to lean on the run, like you said, even though we both think he should open up the pass a little bit more. But the one thing that Shanahan's doing that's kind of stood out to me is he is being a little bit more aggressive, going for it on fourth down more.
I think he trusts that. Yeah, he trusts the defense too. Yeah. You know what I mean? He knows that they're good.
But that's been my one knock with Shanahan, though, is he's always been a little too conservative for my liking. If he starts playing like this,
I will say this is my team. I'm going to play against them every week, because I think they're just way overvalued. They could absolutely win the Super Bowl. I just think they're too overvalued right now for a team led by Purdy, who I just have so many questions about too. Like, I really can't completely trust him or their secondary enough, right? They're very difficult to run the ball against, second in EPA allowed per run. And when they win the turnover battle, they're 13-0. When they lose the turnover battle, they're 0-4. So you play smart against them. Don't make mistakes. Don't beat yourself, and you'll be in the game. They do have the top scoring defense in the league, allowing just 16.2 points per game for them. It's a lot of after the catch stuff, and it's all about scheming it up. So the number, I mean, obviously I'm going to wait a little bit, because 10, if I can get to 10, that would be fantastic. I'm fine with anything over 7.5. So I'm just going to wait to see where the number sort of settles, because at more than the touchdown, I think you're still alive for a backdoor with these teams keeping it close. Like you said, if it's bad weather and the under in the first half, if it's just a close game, give me the points in here. And maybe Seattle
banged up a little bit too. You know what I mean? Like
Seattle could get blown out, right? They could get killed, because they may be, like you were saying, maybe they're just like, hey, we shouldn't even have been here. We're like happy to be here. Or they could kind of come in with no pressure and just kind of playing loose. Like, hey, nobody really expects us to win anyways. Like, let's just go out here and have a good couple drives to start the game and see what happens. You know? So,
and if it's really that wet and that windy, that's going to negate a lot of the athletic advantages that San Francisco has too.
And their fast defense too, right? Like, and the fast defensive line getting after the quarterback too. We saw this with Dallas, and we're going to talk about it a little bit with the Cowboys in just a minute. So Seattle, San Francisco kick off the playoffs this weekend on Saturday. We move to Saturday night. Chargers, Jags. We have the Jags, a 2.5 point home dog in here. Over under 47.5. Chargers 2.5-point favorite on the road in here. 10-7 are the Chargers straight up. 11-5-1 against the spread. 9-8 straight up. 8-8-1 against the spread for the Chargers. Their best win this year was against the Dolphins. Their worst losses, Kansas City twice, but by a total of 6 points. They got beat up by the Jags, Seattle, and San Francisco in games where they were not healthy. They lost to the Raiders. Well, the Chargers are plus 2,500 to win the Super Bowl, the seventh best odds, the same price as teams like the Vikings and the Buccaneers. On the opposing side, you have Jacksonville, they're plus 4,600. That's the 11th best price to win the Super Bowl. What's hard about looking at this Chargers team this year and looking at some of the metrics that I'll mention and things that like DVOA that you and I will point out, so much of their season was spent with an unhealthy roster. And so it's like no Mike Williams, no Keenan Allen for a lot of it, no Bosa, key members of the secondary, offensive line being out. And so there's so many of their games where you look at and you're like, they didn't play well there, or they lost this game. And then you look at the box score and you see who's playing, and they weren't healthy. Now they're probably pretty close to the healthiest they've been, even though Staley decided to play everybody last week when they had nothing to play for. And Mike Williams,
like, I just don't understand that. Like,
it made no sense. It doesn't make any sense at all.
I got from a pretty good source that they weren't going to play, and then like he's out there playing.
He's hurt. Mike Williams hurt. And Bosa got a little banged up too.
They activated
Butler.
Slater's
Rasul Slater, but he probably won't play till next week, right? I think.
Yeah, he probably
if they can win. If they can win, they got to
win. Just a very intriguing matchup. In terms of the first game, that was that game. The first, like, we didn't know if Herbert was going to play that game.
He had the ribs. Don't even look at that game at all. Yeah. It was 38-10. Do not use that game at all. Like, he had rib cartilage injury, and he shouldn't even have played that game.
Yep. And then the Jaguars were doing a lot of RPO with James Robinson in between the tackles.
And he's not there.
Is Etienne going to be able to hold up? Because we all know the weakness. Well, first of all, we say I got the chart. Like, this line's been all over the place. When this dipped on the Chargers minus 115, that's when I bought it. I got the Chargers money line here.
Yeah, I'm fine with the Chargers. This is going to be a good game and a fun game. I would be fine with the Chargers up to where it is, right? Like up to under the field goal. I wouldn't lay 3 or more with them. Obviously, if you miss the number and you want to try to wait and see if you can get the number to come back a little bit, but I would be okay with the Chargers myself up to about up to 3.
Yeah. And then, like, is Etienne going to be able to hold up? Because, like, it's always like 5-6 times a game he like limps off the field like he's dying. He's not really built for an in between the tackle.
We've been saying this all year. Yeah, you've been pointing this out all year.
The other thing, they do have some holes in the offensive line. Like Cam Robinson's banged up. The guy Shepard from Washington's on the IR. Bosa coming back. He's going to be able to go. You got him and Mack. Are the Jaguars going to be able to stop that? Because we did see that their offensive line did have some trouble with the Titans. And let's not sugarcoat it. They should have lost that game.
They allowed 8 pressure on 33 pass blocking snaps, and they only ran the ball for 1.9 yards per carry, just 17 yards for Etienne, and only 22 yards combined between the two running backs on 10 carries.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I think they can win. I think the Chargers are going to be able to get to Lawrence. I think they're going to make Lawrence uncomfortable. I think that Herbert is going to be able to get stuff going. You kind of look at it, the Jaguars, they do struggle defending the running back in the passing game. Eckler, he is a dog in the passing game. I think they're going to struggle to do that. But
the defense against, they have allowed the second most receptions and yards to running backs in the passing game this year. Their defense against play action passes in the first 3 quarters on early downs. So like they get baited. They're 26th in EPA per. There are a lot of things I think that the winning streak has kind of covered up about the Jacksonville Jags. Like they were 3-7 and now they're 7-3. They ended on a 5-game winning streak. They forced 11 turnovers during that streak, and 2 of them were game-winning scores. One thing that's kind of cool. So from week 16 of 2019, Eric, over a 43-game stretch, they were 7-36. In the 9 games since that, they're 7-2. Yeah. They were 7-36 and now 7-2. And they were 3-14 last year. They have a winning record this year. It was just the 5th team since 1970 to go from having the worst record in the league to winning the division. Think about the pass rush. It's been a weakness for them. Everybody's talking about how they have a really great defense. Well, they're going to be without one of their best pass rushers who has a torn Achilles. During this stretch, here are the quarterbacks they've played recently: Zach Wilson, Chris Streveler, Davis Mills, Jeff Driscoll, and Joshua Dobbs.
Yeah, not really a murderous role.
This is not Herbert here. And they don't really have a true number 1 wide receiver. That worries me a little bit. And if it's 3rd and 5 and you need to go make a big play, is it a Kirk or Ingram? Keep in mind, they entered week 18 tied for the most drops in the league with 37 because they have a lot of like number 2 and number 3 type wide receivers. Their major weakness on defense is their pass defense. They entered week 18, 29th in DVOA, 29th against slot targets, allowing 0.42 EPA per attempt. St. Brown and Lamb had huge games against them. Allen runs a lot of those same routes. He could be in line for a massive game. Slot reception.
Right? I bet Keenan Allen over 73.5 yards receiving. Their slot corner, Trey Herndon, PFF's 101 graded quarterback this year. They only graded 122. Keenan Allen runs 2/3 of his routes along in the slot, so he'll be really looked to be matched up against Herndon. You just kind of look at Allen's production. He's gone over the 77.5, 2 of the last 3, 4 of the last 5. He's routinely he's 10 targets a game average. And now you got Mike Williams, who the injury's not as bad as they first reported, but he could still miss the game. If he misses the game, that's even going to open up more stuff for Allen. I think that's
and Eckler, both of them in the short passing game. And keep in mind, so not only is Jacksonville bad with deep passes, they're also bad with short passes. Their defense against passes thrown less than 7 air yards, they're 29th in success rate and 24th in EPA per pass. That's exactly what the Chargers do. Like, they don't even take big shots down the field. They dink and dunk a whole lot. And so if they want to take a shot, the secondary is bad. And then in the middle, they're not very strong either, Jacksonville. And they're only the 30th best tackling team in the league. It's been a good year for them overall, right? But last week, the Titans in the first 3 quarters, the Titans starting Dobbs, they only had to punt 1 time.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, the thing that they were able to do was put Dobbs in 3rd and short, 3rd and 4, 3rd and 3. And I mean, the safeties were cheating up. They didn't fear Dobbs in the passing game. He's not able to do what Herbert is able to do. The one worry is, will Lombardi be too conservative? My one thing about the Chargers is they do run a little bit too much on first down. Mm-hmm. They need to be able to open up the playbook and take advantage of these matchups that they have on the outside, namely in Allen and if Williams is a play, Palmer and Carter. I think this is going to be, like you said, a good game. A lot of money, though, is coming in on the over. 48 points in a playoff game where you have 2 people making their first career starts, maybe a little much. And who knows? This, like, Lawrence is great. It's good to see him.
He's been excellent. He's been very good.
Yeah, it's great to see him flourish with proper coaching and everything. Yeah, for me, it's Jags. I got them on the money line. I'd wait, though, because I think this game
Chargers. You said you got Chargers on the money line.
Yeah, Chargers on the money line. I think this is going to be all over the place. And, like, playoffs, playoffs, you're going to get public against public, sharps against sharps. I have two guys that are like really legitimately like respect that are, they're on the Jags, and me and another guy I do some betting stuff with. He's on the Chargers, so it's always fun this time of year.
Yep, I'm with you. We're on the Chargers also. Chargers, Jags should be a fun one. Two really good quarterbacks. I mean, look at the quarterbacks in the AFC right now. Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen. You have Joe Burrow, Trevor Lawrence, Justin Herbert. And then for the Dolphins and the Ravens, they're guys that were good this year, that the reasons why they're here, they're hurt. But you have Lamar and Tua, who, you and I don't think as highly of Tua as some others, but he did have a very good stretch of the year and was one of the reasons why they're here. That's a really good, strong AFC of quarterbacks and young quarterbacks, guys like this who are going to be around for a while. Jags, Chargers, the Sunday night game.
Real quick, some of these books, they offer like some fun stuff, like who will have the most, most receiving yards, most passing yards, most rushing yards. One of them has, Allen 11-1 to have the most receiving yards this weekend, which I think is a very big possibility.
Absolutely.
If you just look at it, like he's listed the same price as Lamb. We'll get to that, but all these other guys, Jefferson, Diggs, Hill, Chase, there's all little worry points about them.
Let's get to Dolphins and Bills for Sunday morning, first game of the day. This one has ballooned all the way up to 13.5, over under 43.5. Miami's 9-8 straight up, 9-8 against the spread. Buffalo 13-3 straight up, 8-7-1 against the spread. And what's so difficult for this one also is that for the Miami Dolphins, they're starting their third string quarterback, Skylar Thompson. So going through their schedule, going through their metrics, it's so hard. Yes, they have a 3-game winning streak to start the year, then a 3-game losing streak, then a 5-game winning streak, then a 5-game losing streak, and then they end scoring 11 points against the Jets in a game they needed to win to get in. This number is going to probably be around 14. If it was Tua, it probably would have been around 7.5. Teddy B around 10, 11-ish. When Tua starts, they average 25.5 points. They've averaged 16.3 when it was Teddy B or Thompson. And the one thing that made it really difficult, Eric, and just looking at this, like, not only is it Thompson, he has a sprained MCL. And you have Teddy B with a dislocated pinky finger on his throwing hand. He can only throw the ball about 10 yards down the field right now. You have Hill with an ankle injury. The offensive line is absolutely decimated by injuries right now. Cedric Wilson has a hip and a groin issue. The starting running back, Mostert, just had surgery on his thumb. He can't even catch passes. He can only hold the ball with one hand. Can't even put two hands on the ball.
He can't, because of that, he can't pass block either.
Yeah. Howard, their secondary, Holland and Howard in the secondary, they're banged up. Quarterbacks this year with at least 100 dropbacks, Thompson is graded quarterback number 47 out of 52. And they're going to have to throw the ball against Buffalo to keep up with the Bills. It's not like they can just try to hand the ball off and run in this game, because you can't. Your offensive line is banged up, and Buffalo is going to score some points. They're going to score 25 or 20, 25. Like, you need to be able to throw the ball a little bit, which means they're going to have to drop back and throw, and that means it's much more likely for defensive scores, or just that's why this number is so big. I was listening to the Bet the Board podcast. I think they do a really great job over there, and it's a very sharp betting podcast, so a lot of analytical stuff that I think you and I would get some really good info and tidbits from. They had said that if this quarterback with this collection of players and this injury, this group of injuries right now, their defense is bad and they've been bad on the road, this group would have been a 2 or 3 win team this year. The team that's playing for Miami this weekend.
That's absolutely mind-boggling. And then, I mean, I killing myself, absolutely killing myself for saying this. But I mean, if
at what point does there be? What point is there value?
If Hamlin walks out, if Hamlin leads this team out, if he's there, this could be 100-0.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right.
Um,
It could be bad. Just think about what they did to the Patriots last year and how Allen just runs the ball a little bit more come playoff time. I would always be on the opposite of numbers this big. I'm not telling anyone to go lay this number at all. And you and I have kind of picked on the Bills a little. They're plus 420. They're the second lowest odds to win the Super Bowl. They're the number one team in DVOA, top 4 in all 3 phases of DVOA, second in offense, fourth in defense. Only the 17th team in the history of the metric to be top 5 in all 3. Number 2 in Pro Football Focus power rankings. Last year in the playoffs, Josh Allen had 9 touchdowns and no interceptions. They weren't quite as impressive as we wanted them to be. But you know what? They have 3 losses this year by a combined 8 points. And they honestly could have won every game.
Yeah.
Like those 3 losses are game. They could be undefeated very easily. They could get caught up. I just don't think it's against this team, this Dolphins team with this roster here. This is a stay away for me at this number. Like I just can't get it on either way.
Yep, stay away from me. However, I did find a player prop that I like.
Nice. Tell us about it.
I am going back to old reliable Mr. Dawson Knox anytime
nice.
TD plus 220. I kind of feel with how big of a red zone target he is, anytime you get him over plus 200, you have to take it. Just 3 weeks ago in the game against the Finns, 8 targets, 6 receptions, 98 yards, 1 touchdown. Number 3 on the team in red zone targets. Miami, if you're looking at the teams that are still playing, this is the team that has struggled against covering the tight end the most that is playing this weekend. So I think it's a good matchup for him. I know a lot of people in DFS are going to kind of look toward Kittle with the weather issues.
Yes.
I think Dawson Knox is a very good pivot. Pivoting down to him will open stuff up. So yeah, I'm on Knox anytime TD plus 220.
Let's move to the middle game on Saturday. We've got the Vikings as a 3-point favorite here against the Giants over under 48. Rematch of just a few weeks ago. Giants 9-7-1 straight up, 13-4 against the spread. Minnesota 13-4 straight up, 7-9-1 against the spread. For the Vikings, their best wins: Dolphins, at the Bills, and against the Giants. Their 4 losses are all awful. At the Eagles, against the Cowboys, at the Lions, at Green Bay. They got blown out in all of them. Vikings are plus 2,500 to win the Super Bowl, which is the co-7th choice. They're right there in the range with the Chargers and Tampa. 11 of their wins this year by 1 score. All 11 games that they were involved with that were 1-score games, they won. Their metrics, though, you dive into all of them. 18th in EPA per play on offense, 16th in EPA per play on defense, 11 in the Pro Football Focus power rankings, 27 in DVOA. They have the 28th ranked strength of schedule, number 20 offensive DVOA, number 27 defensive DVOA, number 30 special teams. The defense is dead last in yards allowed. Prior to Sunday, they'd allowed at least 20 points in their previous 8 games and 40 in 2 of them. 6 of their opponents during that stretch went over 400 yards in total offense, including the Giants. They're 3rd in the NFL with a +9 turnover margin on drives that have started in the 4th quarter or overtime. That's just fluky. They beat the Giants in Week 16 on a 61-yard walk-off field goal in a game where the Giants outgained them, dominated a lot of the box score. That was the longest field goal in the history of the Vikings franchise and 10 yards longer than the field goal kicker had ever kicked a field goal in his life. Last week, a lot of their players played most of the game. Cousins, Cook, some of them. I'm not really going to take a lot out of last week's game. They're going to enter the playoffs with a negative point differential. They have the best net penalty yardage in the playoffs. Opponents were flagged for pass interference 11 times against them, defensive holding 11 times. Like they have the largest difference in modern NFL history between Pythagorean projection and actual wins. You talked a lot about Pythagorean projections in our season preview. This team just should not have been an 11-win team. They're bottom 8 in the league defending receptions to running backs. I think Barkley could catch a couple passes. They're bottom 5 defense against the 3rd down and in the red zone. And in this game, the Giants secondary is going to be healthier and overall, they're going to be healthier. The Vikings' offensive line is going to be a lot more banged up and look a lot different than when these two teams played against each other just a few weeks ago. And for some reason now, they can't run the ball at all. Since week 11, they're number 31 in EPA per rush. Just 32% of their runs have graded successful. Eric, I was hoping this would be the matchup that we got when I saw these two teams play in the regular season, because I figured this would be just around this line. We'd get a chance to play the Giants. I think it's a really good spot for the Giants. I absolutely think they could beat the Vikings here at this game. And I would play the Giants money line, and at 3 and over, absolutely, I'm on the Giants side.
And one more thing to add to that. Yeah, I'm definitely on the 3. I lock in the 3 too. If you think the Giants are going to win this game, and I talked about it on my stream on Tuesday with Sterling, you have to play the Giants plus 2,500 just to make it to the Super Bowl.
Absolutely. I gave this out on the DRF Sports show with Jack Fitzpatrick earlier too, as just who is a long shot in each conference. And for me, it's the Giants.
Yeah, just because the third time playing the Eagles,
Hurts might be banged up.
Yeah, they match up pretty good against the Eagles. Eagles have some stuff going on. We don't know how the rhythm of Hurts playing, because that's a real thing. Not playing in games really does hurt. Jones lighted him up last time they played. He's a good DFS guy. Sterling did point this out on my stream earlier, how the Vikings are number 2 in the highest rate of explosive plays allowed and giving up a league high 10 yards per target to outside receivers. He pointed out how Isaiah Hodgins is on the outside at 90% of the time. And in week 16, he had 12 targets for 8 receptions, 89 yards, and a touchdown. And it'll be matched up against Patrick Peterson and Duke Shelley. I think Hodgins, he's only 6,400 on the on FanDuel. I think he's a great play. You could do him, then that opens up the salary to play a Herbert in your quarterback position. Cook hasn't looked the same.
Nope.
Giants are getting healthy. DeBoll is a great coach.
So this is one thing that I'm glad you brought him up, because this is something that is a stat that I felt like you might have told me. He's 3-0 against the spread this year in rematches. Like, I like that. He knows how to make adjustments, and then he knows how to adjust to his opponent. So every time he's played an opponent, the next time he's played him, they've done a little bit better against them. So yep. I like him and their coaching staff going against this Vikings team. I think they're going to run the ball a little bit. Barkley, 3rd in opportunity share, 4th in weighted opportunities, 15th in red zone touches. He had 6 evaded tackles, 2nd in breakaway runs, 5th in yards created. And since week 14, the Vikings run defense, 18th in rushing success rate, 20th in EPA per rush, 20th in rushing yards allowed per game. Barkley had 22 touches and 133 yards against this defense when they played last time out. Daniel Jones has been a better. This is another one that you point out to me all the time. Daniel Jones is way better on the road in his career. Passer rating, touchdown to interception ratio, and yards per play have all been way, way higher. It's like there's a little bit less pressure on him or something. Yeah, I like this Giants team. Keep going if you have anything else to add.
You mentioned the DVOA. Broncos and Raiders, who we both thought were shit shows this year. They were ranked higher DVOA than them. Jones covers on the road. He's 17-7, 71% ATS. As a road dog, he's 16-5, 76% ATS. Flip side, Cousins favorite, 47% ATS. In a standalone game, he's only 40% against the number. That's as a favorite or a dog. Last month of the season. So you want to be going into the playoffs, going into hot, like being like a trendy team heading in the right direction. Vikings are 30th DVOA, and during that same time period, they are 28th DVOA defending the run. This kind of piggybacks the point you were making earlier. And during that same period, the Giants had the top rushing attack per DVOA. They're going to be able to move the ball on the ground, which is going to open stuff up to take advantage of the holes in the secondary. And another thing I found pretty amazing is we can both. Now, the Giants did play last week. But let's be honest. Were they getting
No.
ready for that game, or did they treat that game like a bye? They treated
Absolutely.
that game
It's an
like
exhibition
a bye
game.
to get ready for the Vikings, to get ready for like what they're going to run. Cousins playing a team coming off extended rest is only 29% ATS.
Cousins is good when you blitz him. What happened when they blitzed in the first matchup, they were blitzing but playing zone coverage behind that. So what they need to do, they blitzed 26 times against the Vikings in that first matchup. They didn't have good coverage behind it. So what they need to do is they need to blitz and then play man coverage behind the blitz. Cousins only had a 25% success rate win. They're going to have better coverage on Jefferson because they're going to be a little bit healthier in the secondary. So now when they blitz, they'll be able to have better coverage behind the blitz. And I think it's going to confuse Cousins a little bit more also. Like lots of positive trends on the Giants side here. Plus 4,800 to win the Super Bowl. That makes them 12th overall best odds in a very winnable NFC. Anything else to mention here, buddy?
Another fun one though, because like there's like some fun bets you can do here. I mentioned Hodgins, how much he had success against them earlier. He is, I believe, 75-1. Yep, to have the most receiving yards this weekend. I know it's a long shot, but when you look at what he's done the last 4 weeks and how the Vikings back four is, I mean, dude, anyone can throw $20, $10, whatever on a 75.
Absolutely.
Just when there's that much potential for him to go off.
We move to Sunday Night Football. Ravens, Bengals. Ravens 10-7 straight up, 6-9-2 against the spread. Bengals 12-4 straight up, 12-3-1 against the spread. These two teams split this year. The Ravens won earlier in the year with Lamar. Bengals beat them last week when the Ravens weren't playing everyone. They didn't play either Huntley or Andrews in that game. We saw a tweet earlier from Lamar Jackson. Thank you to everyone for your support and concerns regarding my injuries. I want to give you all an update. I'm in the recovery process. I've suffered a PCL grade 2 sprain on the borderline of a strain 3. Still inflammation surrounding my knee, and my knee remains unstable. I'm in good spirits. I continue with my teammates on the road to recovery. I wish I could be out there with my guys more than anything, but I can't give a 100% of myself to my guys and fans. I'm still hopeful we have a chance. That sounds to me like he's not going to play. I think
let's just use, how can I say this? Let's just use this thought process, if you will. He hasn't played for 18 games. There's no way Harbaugh is going to roll him out there after a Friday practice. You know what I mean?
And I mean, if you're Lamar, honestly, I hate saying this, he needs to be selfish right now. This team didn't pay him. He's going to go back out there and put himself on the line when he's still banged up and he has no security in a contract whatsoever right now. I wouldn't do it if I were Lamar either. And it's what makes this game difficult to analyze, because without Lamar, this team is a completely different team. And even if Lamar is playing right now, he's not going to be a healthy football team. He's not going to be playing as a healthy quarterback leading that football team.
I'm surprised this line's 9.5. Like, to be honest with you, I'm legitimate. I thought it was going to be the 7.5 area because Huntley's going to play.
Huntley's playing. Yeah, he's playing. Huntley will play. And
this line is way too. I locked it in at 7.5 because I thought it was going to go the other way. To be honest with you,
and this one is probably one that I'm just going to stay away from because I agree. I think the number is still too big. The Bengals are a team that plus 750, fifth lowest odds to win the Super Bowl. They haven't really put a full game together in a while. Their offensive line issues are starting to add up. The defense for the Ravens has been excellent since they made the trade for Smith in week 9. Bengals have 8 straight wins so far. Pretty good defense. Hendrickson made it really difficult on Stanley when they matched up last week. Burrow hasn't been quite as good against the Ravens this year. Just a 36% success rate on 82 dropbacks. They've disguised their coverages pretty well. Against the rest of the league, 50.3% success rate on 591 dropbacks. There's just a couple things with the Ravens that concern me. Like we've talked about their wide receivers group. They're the least productive group of wide receivers in the league. The secondary struggles. They rank 31st in DVOA against deep passes entering week 18. It could be a tough matchup if the Bengals can get let loose a little bit. Their defense is only allowing just over 14 points per game since week 9. That's second in the league. And I mean, since Lamar got hurt, they have the second lowest scoring offense. They have not scored more than 17 points in any of their last 6 games. I'm definitely not laying the number. This offense with Lamar, 5th in offensive DVOA. Without Lamar, 23rd in offensive DVOA. Can't lay the big number with the Bengals. I don't know if I can get there with the Ravens, though. But you're fine at over 7 on the Ravens side.
Yeah, I was surprised it went over this. I look at this game like this. You have an absolute huge coaching advantage. Harbaugh versus
That's true.
Taylor.
That's true.
There's some very key injuries. The whole right side. We saw how much the Bengals struggled against the Patriots as soon as Collins went down.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you can't take much away from last game because the Ravens basically sat everybody. Ravens played nobody against the Bengals last week. There was some big plays. I know a lot of people are making about Chase against the secondary. His one big play was against the guy that just literally picked up off the street that was coming back from an injury. So, Humphreys, Peters, those guys are going to be back. Smith, Campbell. Ravens are getting everyone back. Bengals are going to be without their whole right side of their offensive line. Look at Burrow this year compared to last year. He has struggled with pressure in his face. Also, if you're without the right side of the offensive line, you're not going to be able to get Mixon going. Mixon's rushing and receiving yard prop. That's something I would kind of look at too, because I think this game's going to be a lot closer than people realize. T. Higgins has a hip injury. That's another thing to monitor. Also, can you guess who the most profitable coach is in terms of betting with during Wild Card weekend?
I mean, I would guess Harbaugh.
You are correct, my friend. 86%. 86% ATS, which is absolutely insane.
I wanted to play against them. I was trying to play against them the last few weeks coming into the playoffs, and I kind of feel this way about both the Bengals and the 49ers. It's weird. Like, they're not undefeated teams, but they've been going on this long stretch of wins that look a little bit better on paper than they might have been, right?
The thing is with it, they're covering so much, people are just blindly betting them. So
and then you're right. Both of the teams are. Both the 49ers and the Bengals have been covering. So everyone's just
feels like this number is more inflated than the 49ers number.
That's probably that's accurate. That's probably accurate. That 49ers number got up overnight, but these two, we've seen Huntley enough to know that the defense can still keep them in games.
And he's just going to run the ball. You know what I mean? He's going to run the ball. They're going to hand it off. They're going to lean on Dobbins. Another big thing, it looks like Edwards is coming out of concussion protocol, and you got Drake. So you got 3 running backs you can lean on. You can get it going to Mark Andrews underneath. The receiving core, it is a worry point, but this is the 3rd time they've played. You have a huge coaching advantage. And I think when you look at the Ravens offensive line versus the Bengals defensive line, I give the advantage to the Ravens. The Ravens defensive line versus the Bengals offensive line, with the Bengals missing 2/5 of it, I give the advantage to the Ravens. I think the Ravens are going to win the trenches. The key thing is the secondary going to be able to defend Chase, and is Huntley going to be able to make enough plays?
He's got to be able to throw the ball a little bit down the field. That's the problem, is their depth of target with him too is just so short. Can they get Andrews just across the middle of the field, 10, 12 yards down the field? If so, they can hit a couple of those. I think they can keep it feisty. Don't have the strongest opinion in this one game. As we move to the Monday Night Football game, we've got the Cowboys and the Tampa Bay Bucks. Dallas 12-5 straight up, 9-7-1 against the spread. Tampa 8-9 straight up, 4-12-1 against the spread. For Tampa, their best wins this year came in week 1 against Dallas, and also against Seattle and Germany. They got some bad losses: Pittsburgh, Carolina, the Browns in overtime. They got crushed by San Francisco. On the Cowboys side, They beat the Bengals. They beat the Giants twice. They beat the Eagles with Minshew. They beat the Vikings 40-3. They did lose to Tampa. They have 2 road losses in overtime games that they blew to Green Bay and Jacksonville, and then an ugly loss in the last week to Washington. For Tampa, injuries along the offensive line and defensive backfield, but the secondary is reportedly getting much, much healthier for this game. So it's hard because their defense is 13th in DVOA, but they should be probably as healthy as they've been all year in the secondary, and they're probably a better defense than that would suggest. They can't run the ball. We know that about them. They have the second lowest number for a playoff team since 1970, but Brady is 7-0 in his career against the Cowboys. He set single-season records in pass attempts, completions this year, all-time records. They did play a lot of their starters to get some extra rhythm last week. We saw Rudolph get involved. Brady led a nice drive. Most of their wins this year don't look very impressive. I mean, they became the 6th team in NFL history to make the playoffs with the losing record. But for them, we watch them at the end of games, at the end of halves. This is a good offense when they run no huddle and hurry up. They're top 10 in EPA. They need to play with more pace. If they're not going to run the ball, then just play with more pace. More often, Brady will hit the short throws, the quick releases, and they'll be fine. Dallas does not come into this game playing well at all, and they are a favorite right now on the road. Dallas is a 2.5-point favorite in this game Monday night on the road, over under 45.5. Since Dak returned from injury, they're averaging 32.5 points per game. That's number 1 in the league. Here's the list of defenses they played, though, Eric. Number 28, the Lions. Number 32, the Bears. Number 20, Green Bay. Number 29, the Giants. Indy was number 14, but they had a bunch of injuries. The Jags, 26. The Titans, 19, sitting their starters. When they played a good defense like Washington, even though Washington was missing all of their defensive line, they got beat up. They played the Eagles, who were number 6, and they were competitive in that game. A lot of their metrics are very good for Dallas. 10 in EPA per play on offense, number 2 in EPA per play on defense, number 5 in the Pro Football Focus power rankings. But for them, Dak has been turning the ball over a lot. He's 15 interceptions this year, which is tied for the league lead, and he played 5 less games than everybody else. That's the first time that's ever happened. He's thrown at least 1 interception in 7 straight games. It's been a while for them where they haven't been playing well. Week 13 against the Colts, it's a 2-point game going into the fourth quarter. Then they have that incredible fourth quarter where they score 33 points. They beat the Texans by 4 in a game where they were down the whole game, and the Texans had a chance to put them away if they would have scored on 4th and 2. They then lose to the Jags in overtime. They beat the Eagles by a touchdown with Minshew, and they struggled against the Tennessee team that was sitting all of their starters. This team, outside on traditional grass, they are 1-4 this year. 5 games they've played on traditional grass, and they're 3rd in defensive EPA when they're not playing on traditional grass. They're 11th when they are. They're 3rd per dropback. They're 15th when they're on grass. The outdoor games slow them down. Parsons and Lawrence only combined for 2.5 sacks in those 5 games. Their footing isn't quite as good. They don't get off the line quite as quick. If they're in tight games, I don't like Mike McCarthy as a coach. I don't like his decision-making whatsoever. They haven't been able to run the ball at all recently. They have lost 8 games in a row on the road in the playoffs. They've had 7 playoff one-and-dones since 1996. I'm taking the home dog here, Eric, with Tampa.
Yeah, I got the +3 as well. I mean, like, you kind of hit the nail on the head. The one thing the Cowboys have done well all year, they've played up, they've played down. We saw the Commanders game. The Commanders are good for dead for the season. Cowboys still kind of playing for something. You know what I mean? Like, the Eagles-Giants game was competitive for like 3 quarters. The Eagles didn't put them away to the 4th quarter. That Commanders game, you're starting a rookie 3rd-string quarterback making his first start. You don't have your top two running backs. Commanders manhandled them. They had a hard time putting away the Titans. Against the Eagles, you have Minshew throwing all over you. against the Jags, they lost in overtime. The Texans, the Colts, even the Giants game. The last time this team really looked impressive was that game on the 20th of November against the Vikings when it was like 41-3 or whatever. They just,
and that was like the all-time spot of spots,
yeah,
right, for them
the
and
Vikings
against
were
Minnesota.
coming off that fluky game against the Bills.
Mm-hmm.
I think that this is going to be a heavy Leonard Fournette game. I think they're going to lean on him a little bit, take advantage of the run defense. Cowboys are just a little more banged up than people realize too on the offensive line.
Offensive line, they had to shift everything around last week.
You mentioned Dakota. Fun fact: Dakota, at the beginning of the season, they always have all these props about a person to lead the league in something. Dakota had the highest preseason price to ever win the most interception award. If that makes sense.
Yeah. He was the longest shot.
The longest shot to ever win it.
The most unlikely.
Yeah. There's some interesting things here. Like, I think CeeDee Lamb is interesting. I mean, Commanders game, he obviously struggled a little bit, but the 3 games before that, 7 receptions for $126, 10 for 120, 11 receptions for 100 yards.
Tampa is bottom 5 defending slot receivers in the league.
Yeah. Well, they're with Bunting, but he also lines up 40% of the time on the outside. Then that would be against Winfield. That duel, both of them are in the bottom 5 in terms of yards per target, and they allow an 8% touchdown rate. So, I mean, I think Lamb, I think his props are interesting. He'd be an interesting one maybe to play for first touchdown. I'm sure that's going to be a little bit higher. And then I know people are going to kind of look toward Mike Evans probably because he's going to be matched up against Diggs. Diggs did allow the most receiving yards last year and 5 TDs. This year he is in the top 10 allowing receiving yards. But I think this is going to be a Godwin game. You look in games like this, Brady tends to lean on Godwin a lot more, working the underneath, and then using that to open up and take your shots down the field to Evans. Evans in games like this, he's just so goddamn touchdown dependent. He's just coming off a 10 reception, 207 yards, 3 TDs last time we saw him on the field because he did sit out that last game. So I think he's going to be a little bit, overvalued in the DFS. So I think this would be a good Godwin game. Tampa's another interesting team.
I agree. I would play them. I could play them to Tampa, and the Giants would be the 2 teams I could play to win in the NFC. Because if Tampa wins this one game, then all of a sudden we think about the top teams in the NFC. It might be a banged up Hurts. We have a rookie quarterback Purdy, and then the Vikings are the number 3 seed.
Yeah. My one worry with Tampa and with what Dallas does, it's not going to be an issue because Jensen is out, his backup is out. So they could be out there with a 3rd string center against the interior of the Dallas defensive line.
Yeah.
To me, that's not really a worrisome. But if you have a 3rd string center against Armstead for the 49ers, that's extremely worrisome to me.
Yep, absolutely.
That'd be my one worry point.
And you know what? Even the Eagles.
Yeah.
Like the Eagles on their defensive front, they had 4 different players with 10 sacks this year, right? Yeah. They could put a lot of pressure on you too. So in the right types of matchups, if things bounce their way, for me, the Giants and the Bucks would be the NFC long shots I could take a chance on. And the AFC team would be the Chargers, right?
Well, I mean, I'm already locked into the Chargers. I'm locked into the Chargers. I'm locked into the Ravens from our preseason stuff.
Yeah, and so for me right now, just looking at who I would bet for the AFC, Bengals, Bills, Chiefs are the 3 big teams. I would look at the Chargers if you were looking to play a team that wasn't them, because I think they can beat the Jags, and then I think they could match up well with any of those other teams because they at least have a quarterback that can go up and down with them.
Oh, for sure. And then one of the things that is always you can always kind of look at. You can always do an exact matchup. Those are always kind of fun. You can get some,
Yep.
increased odds on those. Or another thing you can do is you can kind of look at prices. Like right now, you look at the Chiefs and the Bills. Okay, Chiefs are plus 325. Bills are plus 400 to win the Super Bowl. But you can kind of look at the MVP because let's face it, if the Chiefs win,
It's
who's going to
Allen
be
or
the
Mahomes.
Yeah, Mahomes to win MVP is plus 400. Allen to win MVP is plus 550. So you kind of, you know what I mean? You kind of can get a little bit.
Find the value wherever you can get it.
Find the value because you can kind of play it out. Because let's face it, like, the 49ers would probably be that one team where it'd be somebody else that, that could win it. Same thing with the Bengals.
Right.
Bengals are 9-1, but Burrow is 10-1 to win the MVP. So, I mean, you can kind of find a little value. Yeah, you run the weird thing if like somebody has a obscure like Von Miller type game on the defensive end with like a couple sacks, but realistically it's an MVP that wins the MVP award. So, you could definitely look to play a future that way.
Eric and I will be talking about all these games throughout the week at Better Than Vegas at BTV Bets, Saturday morning, 11 o'clock a.m. Eastern Time, Sunday morning, 11 o'clock a.m. Eastern Time. Probably won't be us for the Monday game, but we'll definitely be talking those Saturday and those Sunday games. And Eric, I know you have a lot of stuff coming out this week too. Tell us about what you have coming up on your shows.
I have my podcast coming out on Friday. My boy Brandon, he's going to give out some NHL bets. David and I, we do our 4 best bets of the weekend. And then my buddy Nick and I, we build you a DFS lineup. Since Nick started coming on, he had some stuff going on. He got married. So ever since that come down, he started coming on. And we've done it 6 weeks. If you followed us, you've cashed 5 out of the 6 weeks playing our DFS lineup. So it's been pretty good.
That'll get the job done, buddy. I look forward to talking more NFL playoffs with you over the next few days. We'll have up-to-date information. If you come and follow us at BTV Bets, flip those notifications on. If you're looking for a place to make your wagers, head on over to Betfred Sportsbook, and we'll know all about injury information, line movement, everything up to the moment when you come hang out with us at BTV Bets on Saturday and Sunday morning. Thank you so much, buddy. Look forward to talking to you the next few days, and we'll be back next week to preview the next round of playoffs right here. We'll get the Chiefs and the Eagles into the mix off their bye, and we hope all of you have a very successful weekend coming up. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. Don't go anywhere. Still a lot more to come